Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Campus Debates. My name is Masi Vugutsa, and it is lovely that you get to tune in with us on Monday at 8 p.m. A few interesting things about this amazing episode tonight is that we have officially reached the quarterfinals of Campus Debates Season 2, where we get to see the top of the top. 8 top teams from the entirety of universities that have existed within this show have reached this level and are going to compete to find out who gets to win the crown of Campus Debates Season 2. If this is your first time watching us, thank you so much for tuning in to Campus Debates. It's a show where we get to discuss the most integral issues that are happening within society from an intellectual and a young point of view, where we get to understand what people think and feel in regards to different situations that are affecting me, affecting you, and anyone we could possibly know. And what is exciting about this episode, it is the first episode of the quarterfinals where we get to meet 2 amazing universities, the University of Nairobi and Tangaza University. So without further ado, help me welcome Proposition Team, the speakers from the University of Nairobi. And from side opposition, we have Tangaza University ready to challenge themselves and at the same time beat University of Nairobi, hopefully, in this quarterfinals round. I think it's about time we get to ask them an interesting question about themselves. We've heard about what they love and what is unique about them. I think they've run out of ideas for such things. So with that, I'll be asking a question to each team member for either side, and we'll get a response from them. So to side proposition, a famous quote we use as debaters is that you lose more than you win when it comes to debates. So would you like to share with us your losing streak in this career of debating?
Well, it's definitely not been rosy. I think that phrase is very true. My first year in competitive debating had a lot of losses, a lot of fourths in rooms, which in debate terms basically means you're last amongst a team of 4. But if you keep at the grind, you'll now be giving other people the fourths. So I would encourage everyone to stick it out. It will pay off eventually.
The first speaker is Paul Kitui from University of Nairobi. Now on to the second speaker.
Okay, for me, I don't know how I can trace it. It's like everyone has different goals that they have when it comes to debate. So my first year of debating was not as bad. I won a lot of novice championships. Then when it now gets to like the topmost level of debating, I get to semifinals, I don't get to finals. So for me, at least it's a win. It's not a total loss. So I think it's relative.
And the second speaker is Jane Baraza, equally from University of Nairobi. And I think she's had a pretty good streak in debating because apparently, according to her, a win is a win. Now, for side opposition, the question I'll be posing onto them is, as debaters, we often use the word that debating is a sport that most of the time requires intellectual capacities to deal with this particular debate. So to side opposition, have you ever engaged in debates outside of debate rooms and have had to sweat to defend your argument or to make sure people easily understand what you're trying to tell them?
Probably yes. It has been so difficult at a point to give your points and also to convince the people that you are at least speaking sense. So you find yourself sweating in order to approve your burden. So it is really true that it becomes difficult and you can sweat at a given point.
On to the second speaker.
To the question asked is as easy as possible again, because I remember once when I was debating about homosexuality and I was on the opposition side supporting homosexuality. I had to sweat, but I remember they say that the main thing of the goal is how they prove the lie to become the truth. And that's what I did, and I won that debate. So I am not afraid of that.
Hopefully, we will get to see the sweat and tears from side opposition when it comes to this engaging and exhilarating debate. We've heard from the speakers. I think it's about time we get to see our judges, the amazing and esteemed panel. I'll allow them to introduce themselves and tell us something interesting about them and what they expect from this round.
Hello, my name is Micah Barazan. I'm a software engineer as well as a biochemist. I really expect a very competitive round. All the best.
All right, my name is Brian Mwindi, a career judge. But I think I've had the opportunity to see these speakers before these quarterfinals. They are not good speakers. They are great speakers. And I hope that today you match up the quality you have shown us previously. All the best to the winning team.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wycliffe Otieno. It's a pleasure, of course, to have the teams present with us here. We've seen them go all the way from round one. At this point, I feel like a dad to most of them for the things that they've been able to do. So I expect to see a really lovely debate today. And on that note, I'm going to give a dad joke. Why did the Ngwashe give flowers to his wife? Because he's a sweet potato.
So from our judging panel, we have a software engineer, a career judge, and a father to the debaters, apparently. That gives him the liberty to give you a dad joke. If you didn't understand, feel free to comment on X at KTN Home with the hashtag Campus Debates, and we'll be sure to explain to you what the dad joke particularly meant and why it was funny to debaters tonight. Now, the motion for this round reads, this House believes that governments should remove tax-exempt status from religious institutions. I'll repeat, this House believes that governments should remove tax-exempt status from religious institutions. This has been the most contentious debates that have always existed between religious institutions paying taxes or not paying taxes. Do you think they owe it to the government to pay these taxes, or do they owe it to themselves to be exempt from such situations whereby streams are not consistent or something like that? With that, we welcome the first speaker side proposition to engage with this motion and give us their substantive. Hear, hear.
Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The book of Mark 12, chapter 17 says, give Caesar what belongs to Caesar and give God what belongs to God. This came about when the inhabitants of Christianity wanted to validate not paying taxes to the state to Jesus Christ, who is the very custodian of the religion. And Jesus told them, give Caesar what belongs to Caesar and give God what belongs to God. This simply emphasized your duty to state regardless of whatever religious affiliation you might have, right? It's why Paul is the most prolific person in the Bible in terms of writing books, but he was still a tent maker, because this separation is very apparent and your duty to both has to be clear. So a few things I'm going to do in framing. The first layer of framing is simple. A church is supposed to be a refuge to many vulnerable actors in society. A lot of the times when life has beaten you down, you're supposed to go to a church and they're supposed to give you refuge, and a lot of the times it needs a lot of resources. You buy people food, and like collectively it needs like a lot of money, so like there's a lot of money to handle there and a lot to account for in terms of income. The second is, we say that this tax does not have to be absolute in terms of symmetry. You can have tax waivers given to other churches in terms of maybe mitigated taxes. Maybe they don't have to pay the same rates. There are churches that do especially well. We don't think they have to be tax the same as churches that are struggling. The main idea we want for is accountability of an entity that's supposed to be ordained by God and that kind of thing. You're still showing that you're accountable to your master in whatever case, which is a consistent premise in the Bible. You've seen it everywhere. Joseph was chosen by God. He obeyed Pharaoh. All of these people were blessed and ordained by God, and they showed like obedience to like their masters and the people who like guided them in the Bible. The third thing I would like to talk about is the concept of separation of church and state. The idea is you're supposed to separate church and state because one, you don't want to give like the church a lot of unchecked power and that kind of thing. We say that this mechanism does not actually give the church unchecked power, because it's actually a form of accountability. It's actually the opposite. It's showing that the church can actually pay like money to the state, and it will be allegiance to its duties. The opposite is actually true in terms of giving the church unchecked power, because you've shown them that you are the ones exempted by the rule of law that every other entity and person in the world is privy to and has consented to. So I'm going to do two main things in my debate. One, I'm going to talk about why these churches do not merit exceptions despite like their special nature and the things that they service. And secondly, I'm just going to talk about why it's better for accountability and that kind of thing. Firstly, on why they do not merit the exception despite like their special nature. I've already talked about the fundamental principle of Christianity and the duty to pay taxes to the state and all of those things as Jesus Christ preached, because he's the one who founded these religions. I mean, Christ, Christianity, that kind of thing. The second thing I would like to talk about is the nature of many churches. A lot of churches are big churches and they inhibit a lot of people and they exert a lot of influence. Many of them act like mega corporations anyway. They buy out shares in other entities to like get money. They get grants. They maintain big cars. A lot of their leaders live lavish lives and these kinds of things. A lot of the times they even expend a lot of resources that like any other big company with their activities. You know, people like T.D. Jakes, Joel Osteen, Joyce Meyer, even the late Bishop Kiuna, they all had mega churches that to some extent exhibit a lot of characteristics that you see in mega corporations. This then means that these people should not be exempted from like paying taxes and that kind of thing, because it's an enforcement of the principal responsibility, but also secondly the nature of the form in which they exist in the world. So it is important, right? Now to the second idea of accountability and why you get more accountability and why this is where we achieve the delta of the debate and cater for the most vulnerable actors. It's very, very simple. I've already explained the concept of the church-state union and how it looks like, and it was prevalent because nobody kept a check on the Catholic Church. The reason the Catholic Church was able to exert a lot of dominance into the state is because of like the unchecked power it had with the Roman Empire, right? So you had the Roman Catholic Church and people are stuck in a lot of like religious dogma and that kind of thing. It went unchecked and it imposed dogma for people in centuries in like perpetuity. We think that it's the same here when you have a lot of these big entities that are then unchecked by the state and they can do whatever they want with that money. We think that has like a lot of negative and desirable, pumpable impact. The impact of this is that you have like a lot of unaccounted for money, right? People pay money knowing that maybe they'll A, go to heaven, or B, at least like B, get money here on earth. But their pastors instead, they buy big cars, they fly to external countries, they wear lavish watches and those kinds of things, right? Or like the congregants suffer because they believe that there's something greater waiting for them, which is like simply not true, right? The second idea is that these snake oil preachers at best promise these people that they'll prosper in that kind of thing, and like realistically they're just milking them for everything that they have. And of course other churches even like get involved in shady dealings. You saw the Mormon church in the United States was engaged in like a real estate scandal and that kind of thing. There are many other examples that you can look at where the churches have not necessarily been benevolent. What is the impact of this? We say that these things have for a long time inflicted a lot of dogma and perpetual poverty in a lot of the people. So then our solvency mechanism and our impacts become very simple. One, we think you have to account for everything that you have as a church, right? Whether it's income tax that has been given in the info slide, whether it's revenue tax, whether it's withholding tax, which is like if I owe Wycliffe tax, if I owe Wycliffe money, I'll give him like 95% of like the money that I owe him and 5% to KRA. So when KRA knows that I've given Wycliffe this amount of money, and like they know the amount of money and taxes they can expect from Wycliffe and that kind of thing, that's another mechanism of tax compliance that can be enhanced and that kind of thing, right? Now in the cases of like other smaller and medium churches that are also growing, we still like to address them. Like I talked about, these are churches that can get some of these waivers and that kind of thing, because the main idea is accountability, right? You can have tax mitigation that makes it easier for them, because we acknowledge the fundamental role that they play, but we still want to enhance this accountability, because even if they are not mega churches, they still have to be accountable, and some of them can grow into bigger churches, and some of them still have impacts over the other churches, and there are a lot, and they can send a message to society. With that, I rest our case. Thank you.
Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. According to side proposition, they think churches have a direct obligation to pay taxation to their states, regardless of what affiliations they are from. With that, we welcome side opposition to possibly negate what proposition has said and equally give us their substantive. Hear, hear.
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I love this kind of motion because it's one of the motions that shows conflict of interest. The government instead thinks that the churches or the religious institutions are billionaires, and that's why they want to come back to tax them. I'll begin by also scripture, just like my fellow partners also did so. There is a parable of the lost sheep in the Bible that shows that the kingdom of God belongs to everyone. The kingdom of God belongs to both the poor, the vulnerable, and even the rich. But why am I bringing this kind of parable? We want to take the most vulnerable people away from institutional religion because of the burden of paying taxes, whereby the burden is going to be seen in the citizens who gives offertory to these particular religions. These people are going to relax behind and say, from now I will not go to religious institution, because the offertory, the 1/10 that we got the tithe, is going to increase. Meaning, we are going to spend more time looking for the lost sheep. And the Bible has said that now we have taken a lot of time looking for the one sheep that's lost, but now it's time to bring all sheep to the churches. And if you are imposing more taxes to the church, the only people who get disadvantage are the citizens. Because in this motion, we have three people. We have the citizens, we have the religion, we have the government. And the government is the real dancer of this particular motion. It's the one who is going to get favored. But the citizens are going to get more burden. Let us take, for example, the churches. You say that the religious institutions get a lot of money from different corporations. Yes, they get a lot of money. But what do they do with this money? We have something called scholarship. Churches, for example, Catholic, have given scholarship to students for them to do further studies. And if you're now taxing them, where are they going to get these particular resources to support this particular scholarship? Again, if you look at times of war and emergencies, people does not run to the state house. People run to the religious institution to get refugee. And when they run there, we need food. We need to support them. Taxing us, you don't give us any external resource, then again you want to tax us. How are we going to support these particular people who run during times of emergency? I will take your POI. Then again, what I'm gonna say again about the citizens who are the main characters in the institution is that when you are taxing them, you are double taxing. You may think that you are taxing the church, but rather you are taxing the citizen more than 2 times, because these are the citizens who pay tax in different areas where they work. They come again to the church, they give out what they have, then you tax them. That's a double taxation. Why must you tax a common mwananchi more than 1 time? Then again, your POI?
Gives is everything that they have. Do you think they hide something in the background that they don't show people?
That's a very good question. We are looking for a lesser evil. Even the government is hiding more than they can hide. We know very well the government is most corrupt than even the churches. Now let us take the lesser evil. Let us leave church for the money they have to support the vulnerable people in the community. Then again, what I want to talk about is charitable contribution. Churches are the cornerstone for the charity. They are the one contributing for the people who cannot make it for a life in this particular country. And we also know that the church has no, a country has no state religion, meaning from the constitutions, there is no state religion, meaning the government will never support a church. Even when they run low, they will never come to support you. But the citizens will be waiting to get refugee from this particular institution. So let us leave the money, the little that they get, so that they can use to facilitate their progress in this scenario. Then I was talking about the charity. The charity, this means that most of the time, churches contribute much in building the nation, whereby the people who are unable to get food, they are given food. People who are unable to pay fee are also helped in this particular scenario. Then again, there is a principle of violating the church and the state. When you bring taxes to the state, to churches, we are going to violate the principle of separations. The church should stand on its own, just because the constitution is very clear, saying that we will not have a state religion. So let us separate the church and the institution. Then now to the prop, I want to give you a burden of approval. how are we going, this tax you want to take from us, how are you going to implement it? In what area are you going to use it that we as the church, we are not using it? Because we are building and constructing houses for the poor people in the society. Then again, how sure are we that when you give this tax, you are going to use them with a good accountability? Then finally, how much does the government want? How much is enough for you that you want in terms of tax to enhance your economic development? Thank you very much. I raise my case.
I think debaters have a knack to engage with motions in the best way possible that they can. What you've gotten from side proposition and opposition is an engagement of whether you think religious institutions should pay taxes to the state, considering they're still performing philanthropic activities for the society and everyone is going to benefit from them. And I think this is why I love campus debates so much and why I know even after our short break, you'll be here with us ready to listen to the second speaker's side proposition and opposition. See you in a few minutes. Thank you so much for hanging on with us. We are here on the second half of the debate. Just a recap of what happened. Because you're talking about religious institutions and things like that, debaters decided it's not an engaging enough motion if they don't quote verses of the Bible. So from side proposition, we got a quote challenging that, giving to Caesar what belongs to Caesar is the most integral thing within society. Then from side opposition, they told you that you need to open up the doors to the most number of sheep to come back to their father's house. And the only way they can achieve that is by actively having religious institutions not pay taxes. You have heard what happened in the first half. We now welcome the second speaker's side proposition to engage further with the motion. Hear, hear.
Okay, two things I'll be doing in my speech. One, engaging with opposition, and secondly, fronting our case. So I feel like opposition have called us out on the entire idea as to how we are assuming that all churches are billionaires. I feel like Paul has been able to engage on both scenarios, where he has said we have already been able to witness how some churches are actually under the money-making sort of ideology, and we've been able to acknowledge smaller churches as well, and he's been able to give other metric, but I'm actually going to engage within my speech as well. They talk about the entire idea as to how it will be a burden towards citizens and they may actually be incentivized to opt out. I feel like this is entirely a lie, because I feel like mostly churches make money out of offerings that people give willingly. No one has ever been forced to go and give an offering, and that's why I feel like in as much as they try to make it look as if people might want to opt out, I feel like from the entire ideas how people are actually, how people tend to view themselves as people who want to get solace and something of that sort, they'll always want to get revival, and if that's the only way they'll be able to get it, they'll give offerings anyway. So I do not even understand how that is going to happen. But on their best case scenario, we feel like this only exists whenever these churches try to put on these harambes and these fundraising sort of ideologies. These are the things that actually make people to be coerced to give these things, especially when it comes to when they're being told that you want to build these churches and whatnot. And this is where our case actually becomes quite important. What do you get from our side? Firstly, we have to concede that also on our side, we'll still be able to house the vulnerable individuals. We'll still be able to give the solace that these people want to have. We'll still be able to contribute to all these things that these people want. And at a point where they tend to question us, how are these taxes going to be used? I feel like this is quite intuitive. It's just going to apply the way that the government taxes at every other individual. It's within their own discretion. If it goes to healthcare, it goes to healthcare. If at all it goes to education, it goes to education. I feel like this is something that already exists, and it is within the state discretion to be able to do so. They cannot come and tell us that, oh, these people are going to do it anyway, and it's even going to lead to more corruption. I feel like corruption already exists in society. It's not something that is going to be quite new. I feel like when Paul talks about accountability, which is actually the main crack of our case, it is very important. At a point where we want to understand how these funds are actually going to be used, how they're supposed to actually be how they're going to be how their benefits are going to materialize. Because at a point where these churches have already been given like unchecked power. I feel like these people who most definitely, these pastors who actually just have the strength to be able to just constantly ask people to give money like all the time, but they're not actually able to like give materialize benefits towards individuals. We don't find this to actually be quite fair. And at a point where they want to talk to us about, oh, we want to like go to look for lost sheep, we want to house them. I feel like at a point where these pastors themselves and even like these major leaders, they go and thrive under like the best portions of this money, and the people who are actually expected to receive these benefits, they do not actually experience it towards the greatest level as it is expected, considering people give this money weekly and they give it willingly so that it is able to cater for these people. They're not able to answer to that question. And I feel like on the entire idea of like separating the church and the state, I feel like at a point in time where most of these politicians even go and campaign towards, they tend to actually campaign, so like using these churches, whatnot, they always talk about the entire ideas to, oh, we want to like make the nation better, etc. I feel like the church and the state, they've always like been intertwined in such an instance, but at a point where we're telling you that you're not entirely like binding the church itself towards the state, rather we just want it to like ensure that it's going to be accountable for all the things that is actually experienced. Yet people will still actually go hungry or something of that sort. If at all they're giving you benefits, it's only for a short-term impact, but you still give this money every time. We still don't understand how that is actually going to be quite beneficial. What's the delta? We'll still be able to like get a lot of benefits on our side. We'll still be able to cater for individuals. We'll still get infrastructural development. We will still house the sheep that they talk to us about. But at the end of the day, we want to understand how the money that people tend to give is going to be utilized. And at a point where we're able to call out these leaders from constantly just using this money at a point where they feel like they're not even being checked about. We feel like that is something that is very important, and that is a bullet we're willing to bite from government side. Here.
Side proposition have told you they're willing to bite the bullet and possibly suffer the consequences of religious institutions not paying their taxes to the government. Let's get a response from side opposition, the obvious clown that you've met consistently from Tangaza University, the mathematics teacher, second speaker. Here.
It's quite hot inside here. I wonder why. But the reason is one. They are ready to bite the bullet, and also you are ready to bite the bullet if they can catch it. One thing, why do you tax the rich and leave the poor? It's because you just want to get money and use it in the wrong way. They have said they will leave the poor churches to just continue growing so that they can become a bigger church so that later they can tax them. That's what they have said, not me. I'm using their own statement. Their main argument is about accountability to our side. That's their main argument. Our side, how are we accounted to these offerings that the people bring? That we are going to answer to you very fast. You have said they are removing, they contribute willingly. That willingly, first of all, is from their heart. And that's why when you quote the Bible and tell us, give what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God, who were being asked that question was the people. They were the people. The people are the ones who are removing taxes, not that willing money. That willing money will go to the church, and the church will use that money to build other things like houses and schools and hospitals. That's the key thing. And in their world, they are not biting the bullet of how will they account for the way corruption is. Let's look at our general country like right now. Yes, we are being taxed, overtaxed, and our money is not used to the right manner. So how are they going to prove to us that in their world they are going to use that money in the right way? Like I believe and I agree. In the church you have both the good pastors and the false pastors, and I don't disagree that we are ready to bite and we will take it in. But remember, even Jesus himself in the Bible, the way they are talking about the Bible, said that it will come a time when there will be good pastors and false pastors, and that's when he said, give what belongs to Caesar and to God. So if you are the one who is having good brain and know how to read the Bible, you will go and know which church should I go and which church should I not go, because you have the knowledge, not me as the person. I'm just speaking out of my own freedom of speech. And secondly, I'll talk about non-profitable status. Non-profitable status is very simple, because if you look at the government, they are gaining money from many ways. Taxing the people, taxing institutions like those Coca-Colas and everything. But the church itself gets money from vulnerable people. Like if they want to build a church, they want to build a school, they will still come to the society and tell them, can you contribute so that we build schools and ABCD? When they're buying this material, the government is taxing those materials. Why can they eat that enough money that they're taxing from building materials? Secondly, when this school is built, the government will come back and say the school fee that is being paid by students, they should tax that. That we agree, but the church should be left as a church. Because if you look at our society right now, a lot of schools that are very functioning are the schools which are built by churches, not by the government. The government, first of all, their schools are very poor. Poor managed, poor education. Students are looking like thugs in their schools. But in the schools of churches, you'll find these people are taken in the right manner, the right way of living. They're not proving us that burden. Secondly, I will talk about, there's a point that he was talking about, not to pay at the same rate. Not to pay at the same rate, meaning just they all have to tax. You have to tax all of them. Both the poor and not the poor. Because that's what I wanted you to prove to me, that why are you saying they should not be taxing at the same rate? Lastly, I will be talking about the vulnerable people in this motion. The vulnerable people are the citizen and the religion. The beneficiary is the government. The government will always tax at any given point so that they can be able to eat and eat and eat. That's why if you look at the current situation, we are fighting against that. If they tell us that the government already has to tax because the politicians go to campaign and everything, we are the people who have said we don't want them to go and do politics in the churches. So we are already removing that link between them and the churches. We want the churches to be pure and the pure church, not the government coming and us to preach. Second, the citizens are the ones who are removing taxes, not the contribution, not the religion. The church is just built as a church.
Okay, on the entire idea of poor churches and like the rich churches, I feel like we were just trying to argue on proportionality. And if you call us out on the entire idea of like corruption on government, you still have situations where those leaders in churches, they also squander these funds. So you have to also account as to how these people are actually going to continuously manipulate Christians on the entire notion that they should just be giving these funds willingly.
You know, one thing, when you're listening to a statement, you should listen with all the 2 ears. I've said, in our world, we have one thing. We have both the good churches and the bad churches. So it's the person's willing, not my choice, to tell you, go to this church or this church. I've talked about that and I've said that. We agree that in our world, there are just those people who will still squander our willing offerings, and there are those churches which have accountability. A church will always be a church, and during wars, people run to a church, not to their government, not to the government or any other institution, but the one only key thing is the church, so that they can get that help. That's why when in 2007, when people were burnt in the church, until today, if you hear that statement, you feel pain. Thank you.
Will versus obligation, the benefit of the state versus the benefit of the churches, and finally, the biggest argument that I think is a very sore subject for every Kenyan that is currently within this country, taxation. To give you a moment to breathe, we'll be going on a short break for you to process the whole idea of introduction of taxes to religious institutions, whether you agree with that fact or not. Feel free to engage with us on X at KTN Home with the hashtag Campus Debates, and let us know, do you think religious institutions should introduce a taxation fee for them to give back to the state, or do you think that the state should remain as is and separation of church and state should continue to exist? See you in a few minutes, where we get to hear the feedback from the judges and who has won the first quarterfinals round. Thank you so much for hanging on to the third segment of Campus Debates Quarterfinals first episode. I hope this break has been really good to you, to give you a moment to breathe and take in the whole idea of taxes being introduced to religious institutions. And if you've not yet engaged with us on X, feel free to do that now at KTN Home with the hashtag Campus Debates. If you're yet to find out what happened in the first half and the second half of the debate, here's a short recap for what happened. Side proposition made an argument that taxes are the best sort of possibility to offer some level of accountability for these churches as a whole. They do not want pastors and people or religious leaders to go scot-free using their congregants' money for their own benefit. At the same time, they say that the state has greater capacity to actively handle this money, and the argument cannot be that it is corrupt because corruption exists on both ends and it is there regardless. From side opposition, however, they argue that the introduction of taxes will now place an obligation to citizens or people who engage in these religious activities to give money to their churches. Equally, they think it would be a very bad measure, considering that churches are a safe haven for people whenever the state has failed them or whenever they are currently going through troubles that exist within the state. I don't know which argument has swayed you, and I think the judges agree with me because they want to ask a question to each side for them to defend themselves for 1 more minute as to whether they get to continue to the semifinals or they will get to watch this particular show from the audience side. With that, I welcome the judges to ask a question to side proposition and opposition.
All right, so my question will go to side proposition. For context, taxes are a must. If you're supposed to pay taxes, it means it's a must for you to be paying them. It's a law. And for you to avoid paying taxes, you are now going against the law and will be subjected to what the law states for those who do not pay taxes. That's for context. What we get from said proposition is that give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and to God what belongs to God. And they go ahead and say that offerings are given willingly. So this is the question. Giving taxes in that kind of context, it would be like coercing people. More like Caesar will be taking also what belongs to God. Is it?
For side opposition?
That's the good thing.
Well, my question goes to team opposition, that's Team Tangaza. I'll just get to it. What metrics are you going to use to make sure that it's the vulnerable in the church that are going to be helped, considering the fact that the church serves and houses both the rich and the poor?
The question to side proposition is, do you think that it is justified for introduction of taxes to exist because now Caesar is apparently taking from God? And from side opposition, the question that has been posed to them is, what guarantee do you have that vulnerable people within these church spaces are going to be the main target of assistance and philanthropic activities, considering that the church houses both the rich and the poor? I think these are engaging questions that are asked to both teams. With that, I welcome side proposition to respond to that question through 1 minute. Here.
Okay. Okay. So I'm starting in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, so I've gotten a question that apparently Caesar is robbing God. I think I need to clarify a few things. One, as a church, you exist in a society with other entities. If you understand the fundamentals of like social contractarian analysis, whatever entity you are, you have to cede some kind of autonomy to the state. Just because you have allegiance to God that you worship does not exempt you from these things. And in any case, the principles of Christianity and those that are devout to it are told you pay tithe first before you even pay taxes. So before Caesar even gets money, to the people that ascribe to Christianity, the church has already gotten its share from the people. Also, the other thing is like you're taking it from these churches that are already entities. It's not again people taking directly from people who are subscribed to the churches unless they want to give them willingly. Secondly, like these taxes, the way you pay taxes exposes all of your methods of income and that kind of thing. So you're actually able to use more money to service these like vulnerable individuals. And thirdly, like the government is spread out too thin anyway. With churches, there's a high expectation, which is why church schools are more efficient anyway. It's because they don't have to spread themselves out like the government and that kind of thing. I think with that, we rest our case. Thank you. Yeah.
I told you, when somebody has nothing to say, they try to convince you with lies. And that's what they're doing. They have not even answered the question of giving what belongs to Caesar, and to God, to God. Don't say a Bible verse that you cannot be able also to explain. Now, to our question that was asked, there is that, in churches, there's that thing that is known as shift law. If you are serving this church for 1 year, you will be shifted to another church. That helps to prevent that corruption and also create an accountability. If the Bible itself, there's a point where we are told that there was a woman who had only 1 shilling. She contributed that willingly, and there was those who have 1 million, and they contributed also. So it's not depending on who is contributing, but look at the vulnerable people who are the citizens who are going to give us this tax, and stop double taxation to our community and answer the question. The reason why we win this motion, we have already proven to you the burden of contention here, which is accountability by shift effect, and also we have answered the question that was being asked by the judges. Thank you, and I rest my case. I'm Alexander Buliba from Tangaza, a teacher of mathematics and chemistry. Thank you.
An amazing, amazing round that was, with 1 minute from each team trying to defend themselves for 1 extra minute as to whether they need to actively be seen in semi-finals or if they're going to watch from behind the scenes. What you have gotten from both teams is an argument of social contract theory, specifically from proposition, arguing that based off of social contract theory, the whole idea of taxation would not be taken from God, ideally, but rather just giving to Caesar what belongs to Caesar based off of their intuition pump. With that, I think I will welcome our judges to give us the deliberation that they've had and the call that they've had for this debate round. I know it's been tough. They are shaking their heads because it's been a tough round to decide whether Tangaza or University of Nairobi is moving to semi-finals. I welcome the chair to give us the call.
Okay, thank you so much. Of course, it's been a very tough round. We've had a very tough deliberation. Like I said, I'm your dad. I love all of you. Whoever remains, it's okay. You can see me after this. Will give you even more comfort as to why we think you did not merit to make it to the next round. So the debate was largely a very contentious debate. We had clashes coming in the form of, the biggest clash coming in the form of accountability, where proposition side essentially talk to you or allude that there is no check in religious institutions, giving the leeway for these religious leaders, the pastors or the church leaders, to amass individual wealth to the expense of these citizens as much. And there's now even more dogma for people to even give these offerings or to give money to the church. So they talk about the state being better placed to accrue development, to have, for example, the issue of schools, to guarantee accountability on their side. In opposition side, on the other hand, they tell you that, they contest this and tell you that, one, it's a matter of a lesser evil. So they tell you that in status quo, the state is considered corrupt, the state is considered to misappropriate resources, to misappropriate taxes, and they're not accountable largely, making people in all essence, run to the churches as the last resort in the first place. Interestingly also, when a POI is asked to both sides, we get one answer from the proposition side telling you exactly that the church is more efficient in leading to this development or accruing this development. They give you the scenario whereby the government deals with a large vast of sectors in status quo. That is why they're not efficient. So this builds into what opposition side was trying to talk about. Apart from the misappropriation, the corruption of all of this stuff being done by the state largely, they also, the proposition side also accrue to the fact that telling you that, you know what, the government is dealing with a vast majority of people, therefore they cannot be efficient in this regard. So the debate now comes to a scenario of where who is more efficient in running this offering or these benefits that come to the churches, because all sides of the house agree that these offerings or this money or this income that the churches get goes directly back to the people in terms of development, be it giving them aid, be it building them schools. So who is more efficient or who is more convincing in proving which side is more efficient in this side? The judges largely for the first half of the liberation side was swayed on one side, but towards the end of this, there was a split. But again, also largely we are now finally convinced and it's a unanimous decision. I'm seeing Windy's laughing. I'm seeing Mika is not contesting. So we thought largely that this round was won by the team in side of opposition. Thank you so much.
You have heard from the judges themselves with a very brief elongated suggestion for why they think side opposition has carried the day, so we get to see Tangaza University again in the semi-finals episode that will be hosted in a few weeks on Monday at 8 p.m. But congratulations to Tangaza University for winning this round for themselves. For side proposition rather, it's been an amazing journey with the University of Nairobi, every single time giving us amazing arguments from their side and the most intellectual beat to understand what social contract theory looks like, what society looks like, and what society largely buys into. With that, I would like to congratulate the University of Nairobi for making it this far to the quarterfinals episode of Campus Debates Season 2. Hopefully, we will get to see them in the next rounds, not from the audience seat, but hopefully in a special round where we get to commemorate every debater that has shown up on this stage. With that, I think we've come to the end of this particular episode. Thank you so much for hanging on with us. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your Monday 8 p.m. with us. It's been an exhilarating round for us. I hope it has been for you as well. If you don't agree with the verdict that we have gotten from our judges, feel free to engage with us on X at KTN Home with the hashtag Campus Debate, or message us through the number 0759 434389. 0759 434389. We will for sure respond to you and let you know the justification for the call that we made as the judging panel, and at the same time get to hear from the speakers how they felt for this particular round. Now, my name is Mercy Vugutsa. It's been amazing hosting this episode. Thank you for tuning in with us. See you next week on Monday, same time, same place. With me, Mercy Vugutsa.